It began with greed. In February 2003, millionaire businessman Amarjit Chohan thought he was on the verge of a major deal, one that could take his freight company to the next level. But behind the handshakes and business suits lurked two men who weren't interested in partnership, only in profit. Kenneth Reagan and William Hornsey, both career criminals with a history of drug trafficking, had a plan to take over Chohan's company CIBA Freight by any means necessary. That plan would lead to one of the most shocking and cold-blooded family murders in modern British history. In mid-February, Chohan, his wife Nancy, their two young sons Devinder and Ravinder, and his mother-in-law, Charanjit Kaur, vanished without a trace. For weeks, police searched land, air, and sea. Flyers went up across London. But the truth was darker than anyone could imagine. Chohan and his family had been lured to a farmhouse in Salisbury, held captive, drugged, and strangled. Their bodies were taken out to sea, dumped in the English Channel, all so Reagan and Hornsey could forge papers and claim ownership of Chohan's company. Within months, the bodies of Chohan, his wife, and mother-in-law washed up on the southern coast. The bodies of his two children were never found. In 2000, both Reagan and Hornsey were convicted of 5 murders and sentenced to life imprisonment, their crimes driven by greed, arrogance, and pure evil. This is not just a story of murder, it's a story of betrayal, ambition, and the lengths men will go to for money. This is the chilling case of William Hornsey and Kenneth Reagan. The Chohan family murders. Classification: mass murderer. Characteristics: drug dealer. In order to take over his business, the bodies of Chohan's sons were never found. Number of victims. Date of murders: February 15th to 16, 2003. Date of arrest: August 2nd, 2003. Date of birth: 1954. Victims profile: millionaire Amarjit Chohan, his 25-year-old wife Nancy, their 2 young sons, Devinder and Ravinder, and Mrs. Chohan's mother, Charanjit Kaur. 51. Method of murder: suffocation, strangulation. Location: London. England, United Kingdom. Status: sentenced to life in prison on July 5, 2005. William Hornsey, born 1954, is a British murderer who achieved notoriety in 2005 when he was convicted of murdering millionaire Amarjit Chohan, as well as Chohan's wife, mother-in-law, and 2 sons. The bodies of Chohan's 2 sons were never found. Hornsey was sentenced to life imprisonment, and on 23 February 2008, The Times reported that he was among 50 prisoners who were issued with whole life tariffs and are unlikely ever to be released. 2 men guilty of family murder. Friday, 1 July 2005. 2 men have been found guilty of murdering a millionaire and his family in order to take over his business. The bodies of Amarjit Chohan, his wife, and her mother from West London were washed up on the south coast in 2003. Their 2 children have not been found. Career criminal: Kenneth Reagan, FIV4 of Wiltshire, and his accomplice William Hornsey, 51 of Dorset, were convicted of murdering all 3 generations. Peter Rees was convicted of Mr. Chohan's murder, but cleared of the other 4. The 38-year-old from Portsmouth, Hants, was also convicted of assisting an offender following the 8-month trial. Indian-born Mr. Chohan, his 25-year-old wife Nancy, their 2 young sons, Devinder and Ravinder, and Mrs. Chohan's mother, Charanjit Kaur, 51, disappeared from their Hounslow home in February 2003. Reagan, a convicted drug dealer and police informant, planned to take over Mr. Chohan's successful CIBA freight company to use it as a front for importing drugs. He wanted to make people think the 46-year-old, who was known as a chancer and had been to prison for tax evasion, had given up his business and gone abroad, the trial was told. So he lured Mr. Chohan to Stonehenge, Wiltshire, held him against his will for several days, gagged him, and forced him to sign over his company before murdering him. The jury, which took 13 days to come to its verdict, was told how the plan would have worked had it not been for Ms. Chohan's brother Onkar Verma in New Zealand. Bodies dug up. He refused to accept that his mother, his sister, and her family would have just vanished. As police inquiries were about to turn to a farm in Tiverton, Devon, where the defendants had buried the family, the men returned to the farm to dig up the bodies. The trial heard that on Easter Sunday 2003, the bodies were taken out to sea and dumped. 2 days later, Mr. Chohan's body was found floating in the water near Bournemouth Pier. His wife's body was found in the same area that July and Mrs. Kaur was found in November, in a bay off the Isle of Wight. Paul Mendel, defending Reagan, said he would have had to be desperate beyond belief to slaughter an entire family for the sake of a business. After the conviction, his legal team maintained he was innocent and was planning to appeal. Police still do not know how Mr. Chohan died, and have said they will be asking the men to tell them where to find the bodies of 2-month-old Ravinder and 18-month-old Devinder. Det Chinsp Dave Little, who led the investigation, said it was a crime utterly beyond the comprehension of decent society. A young family, a new family, was entirely wiped out at the hands of these murderous men in an attempt to line their own pockets, he said. A Chohan family friend, Suresh Grover, read out a statement on behalf of Mr. Verma saying, "The last 2 years have been a living nightmare. The deliberate, premeditated slaughter of my innocent family is akin to me being given a life sentence. A life with no laughter, no happiness, and no joy." The murder trial, which cost more than $10 is thought to be the longest in the history of the Metropolitan Police and of the Old Bailey. Family murder. Men jailed for life. Tuesday, 5th July 2005. 2 men who murdered a millionaire and 3 generations of his family have been jailed for life. Kenneth Regan, 55, of Wiltshire, and William Hornsey, 52, of Dorset, were convicted at the Old Bailey on Friday. Peter Rees, 13, of Hants, who was found guilty of murdering Amarjit Chohan of West London, but cleared of killing 4 others, was also jailed for life. The judge told Regan and Hornsey they should never be released, and Rees will have to serve at least 23 years. The family disappeared from their home in Hounslow in February 2003. The men wanted to take over Mr. Chohan's freight business and use it to import drugs to the UK. Judge Sir Stephen Mitchell, passing sentence, told Hornsey of Adeline Road, Bournemouth, and Regan of Forge, close Wilton, near Salisbury, they were highly dangerous men. He said, "Your crimes are uniquely terrible. The cold-blooded murders of an 8-week-old baby and an 18-month-old toddler, not to mention the murders of their mother, father, and grandmother, provide a chilling insight into the utterly perverted standards by which you have lived your lives. Your characters are as despicable as your crimes. Each of you is a practiced, resourceful, and manipulative liar." Rees of Kings, close Rowland's Castle near Portsmouth, was also convicted of assisting an offender. The bodies of Amarjit and Nancy Chohan and Mrs. Chohan's mother, Charanjit Kaur, 51, were found washed up off Bournemouth and the Isle of Wight on various dates in the months after they went missing. Their 2 young sons, Devinder and Ravinder, have never been found. When Mr. Chohan's body was discovered, a note was found in his sock, pointed to convicted drug dealer Hornsey as being his killer. Police said they believed Mr. Chohan had been held captive for several days before his death, and when he realized he was going to be murdered, he concealed the letter, which was addressed to Hornsey's father. Det Insp David Little said the crime was the worst he had ever dealt with, saying the family died purely because of financial greed. He told BBC News, "All of the officers involved in the case did a fantastic job. It spanned 2.5 years, and the conclusion proves the amount of work they put into it." The murder trial, thought to be the longest involving the Met, cost more than 10 million. Chohan murders timeline. 2 men have been convicted of the murder of a family, including 2 children, one of them 8 weeks old. A third man has been convicted of murdering the father and assisting an offender. BBC News traces this crime's history. 1997. Kenneth Regan befriends Belinda Bruin after meeting her at the bar in Harvey Nichols' Knightsbridge, London. He showers her with gifts, including a Cartier watch, and offers to take her to Monte Carlo. 1998. Regan is arrested in possession of 30 kilograms of heroin. He is later jailed for 8 years after agreeing to turn Queen's evidence. 2000 house. Dec Regan is given a concurrent 8-year sentence for his part in a huge fake passport racket. Among those he gives evidence against is his friend Bill Hornsey. 2002. June, Regan is released from jail after serving 4 years. He soon begins to plot ways of making big money. Regan also gets in touch with Belinda Bruin again. She has moved from London to a farmhouse in Devon. 2003. John Regan tries to organize a $3 million deal involving land near Heathrow, which Amarjit Chohan has an option to buy. When this falls through, he begins to focus on Mr. Chohan's haulage company, Seba Freight, which is based near London's Heathrow Airport. 13 Feb. Chohan disappears after going to meet a man allegedly interested in buying Seba Freight. He is abducted by Regan Hornsey and Peter Rees and taken back to Regan's father's home near Salisbury, Wiltshire. 15 Feb. With Rees guarding Mr. Chohan, Regan and Hornsey travel to Hounslow, West London, and talk their way into Mr. Chohan's home. They kill his wife Nancy, her young sons Ravinder and Devinder, and her mother Karanjit Kaur. They hire a van and take the bodies to the West Country. 16 Feb. Chohan is forced to sign a series of blank letters and make a couple of phone calls. Later that night, they kill Mr. Chohan. 17 Feb. Regan turns up at Seba Freight's office with a power of attorney, signed under duress by Chohan, and proceeds to start running the company. 19 Feb. The 5 bodies are loaded onto a hired van and driven down to Belinda Bruin's farm near Tiverton, Devon. Regan, Hornsey, and Rees dig a ditch and bury the bodies covered with aggregate. 21 Feb. Regan takes Mr. Chohan's car to a friend in Southampton, who agrees to dispose of it. 5 Mar. Nancy Chohan's brother Onkar Verma travels to London from New Zealand to put pressure on police to find out what has happened to his sister. 21 Mar. The case is referred to Scotland Yard's Serious Crime Group, and a week later, a detective interviews Regan for the first time. 19. For Easter Saturday, Regan is spooked by the progress of the police investigation, and fearing they will soon learn of the farm in Devon, he returns with Hornsey and Rees and digs up the 5 bodies. 20. April Easter Sunday. Having bought a boat, Regan, Hornsey, and Rees take the bodies out to sea and dump them off Dorset. 21. Upper Easter Monday, police monitor. Regan and Hornsey at a fictional rendezvous in Newport, South Wales, but neither Mr. Chohan nor his supposed kidnappers turn up. 22 Upper. A body is found floating in the sea off Bournemouth Pier. 29 April. The body is confirmed to be that of Mr. Chohan. That night, as detectives interview Belinda Bruin, Regan, and Hornsey, realizing the game is up, flee by ferry to France. They then travel to Spain. Rees also goes on the run, hiding out with a friend in Gloucestershire. 30 Tior. Upper police begin excavating the field in Devon. They later discover DNA belonging to the Chohan family and other incriminating items. 14th May. Rees is arrested in a pub in Colford in the Forest of Dean. 15 Jewel. Another body is discovered by fishermen off the Isle of Wight. It is later identified as being that of Nancy Chohan. 2. Og Regan, having run out of money in Spain, is arrested at a campsite in Ghent, Belgium. 2. Sep Hornsey, fed up with life on the run, returns to Dover and gives himself up. 7. Sep. A third body is washed up on the Isle of Wight. It is later identified as being that of Mr. Chohan's mother-in-law, Charanjit Kaur. 2004 Art. 8 Nav. Regan, Hornsey, and Rees go on trial at the Old Bailey. All deny murder and false imprisonment. 2005. Jewel, Regan, and Hornsey are convicted of the murders. Reese is convicted of Mr. Chohan's murder and of assisting an offender, but cleared of the other 4 murder charges. The bodies of Ravinder and Devinder have never been found. Reagan, Hornsey, and Reese. The murder game. Ken Reagan had lived the criminal high life and was desperate to taste it again. Through drugs and bogus passports, he had rubbed shoulders with some of the country's most notorious gangland figures. Dealing heroin in the late 1980s had made him a fortune and set him up as a country gentleman. Reagan, 56, drove the latest Mercedes sports cars and invested in a freight company, which he was using as a front for drug smuggling and money laundering. It all went wrong in 1998 when police caught him with 25 kilos of top-grade heroin and wads of cash in the boot of his car. He was jailed for 8 years. When he was released, Reagan was desperate to start operations again, but he had no money to invest in a freight firm. The solution was simple. If he couldn't buy a firm, he would steal it. Reagan's target for the theft was millionaire Anil Chohan, who had been jailed for 3 years for tax evasion and later became involved in the exporting of pallet loads of chat to the United States, the soft drug chewed by North Africans. Mr. Chohan was desperate to sell his freight firm. Importing chat was a high-pressure job with crowds of Africans regularly turning up at the warehouse hoping for a sample from the latest shipment. Kill the entire family. It may never have occurred to Reagan that to get control of the Heathrow-based company CIBA Freight, he would have to kill not only Chohan, but his entire family. To put his plan into action, he recruited 2 accomplices who he had known thought the criminal underworld for many years, Bill Hornsey, 53, and Peter Reese, 40. Reese would be used to guard Mr. Chohan at Reagan's father's house in Salibsary, while the 2 others made the arrangements for the transfer of the business. The final member of the team was Reagan's unwitting dupe, Belinda Bruin, the ex-PR executive and former best friend of Paula Yates, the late wife of Bob Geldof. Reagan was besotted with her and wanted the glamorous divorcee to be the front for the takeover of CIBA Freight. Coincidentally, she had 50 acres of land at Great Colford House at Stoodley, near Tiverton, in Devon, perfect place to bury a body. Reagan began calling Mr. Chohan in February of 2003, claiming he had Dutch backers who wanted to buy the firm, and he became a regular visitor at the offices. He also began assembling the kit that would be needed to hold Mr. Chohan captive while he signed the necessary documents, the drug GHB and rolls of brown packing tape from the victim's warehouse, which would be used to mummify him. On Thursday, February 13, 2003, Mr. Chohan was invited to a business meeting at Stonehenge and told his workforce, "I'm off to do a deal." He was never seen alive again. Father's home used as house of death. Mr. Chohan was taken to Regan's father's home in Forge Close, Salisbury, where he was held for 3 days. He suffered a living nightmare as Mr. Chohan was drugged, tortured, and made to sign away his livelihood. Throughout the ordeal, he would have known his family were in grave danger, as he was made to record messages, telling them not to worry. Write letters explaining his disappearance and sign. 23 blank pieces of paper, which would be used by the gang to write different letters after he was dead. Reagan may have involved the Chohan family as a lever forcing the businessman to hear their terrified voices as he sat bound, gagged, and helpless, but somehow he managed to find the courage and guile to conceal a bank letter sent to Reagan at the Salisbury address in his sock. The clue from beyond the grave would nail Reagan and his accomplices and leave his lawyers desperately grasping at claims of a police fit-up. At first, Reagan coolly played the concerned friend, as he assured Anil's young wife. Nancy, 24, her husband was returning home soon. She was shown the letters and played the recordings. But 2 days after Mr. Chohan disappeared, Nancy, their sons, Devinder, 18 months, Ravinder, 8 weeks, and Mrs. Chohan's widowed mother, Charanjit Kaur, 51, were also murdered in their home in Hounslow, West London. Police believe they were all probably strangled, buried under 8 tons of rock. Their bodies were taken to the farm in Tiverton to share Mr. Chohan's grave and entombed under 48 tons of stone and gravel. As he buried the family with a mechanical digger, Reagan could not resist a sick joke about his landscaping experience and told neighboring farmer Keith Luxton, "I've done a lot of driveways for Pakistanis." Staff at Sibba Freight knew Mr. Chohan was a chancer, and they accepted Reagan's cover story that he and his family had fled after getting into trouble over the chat deals. But Onkar Verma, Mrs. Chohan's brother, who lived in New Zealand, refused to believe she had simply disappeared and called the police. When detectives spoke to Bruin and she revealed her connection with Reagan, he knew it was only a matter of time before the farm was searched and the grave discovered. He had to buy time so the bodies could be removed and characteristically combined it with his last big joke. Reagan told police Anil Chohan had asked him to supply him with a false passport and had arranged to meet him at the Bronze Pig in Newport, South Wales, trading on the slang name for police officers. Detectives kept the pair under observation as they waited at the pig and saw them making exaggerated, head-scratching gestures when Mr. Chohan failed to turn up. Reagan and Hornsey were utterly removed from the horror of their actions and believed they could afford a laugh because the bodies would never be found. Grim task of exhumation. The gang then began the grim task of digging up the family and dumping the corpses in the channel in a small boat they had bought for the purpose. Hornsey would tell how he looked down into the burial pit that weekend to see the businessman's body trussed up in a sheet like a Christmas cracker before they slung it into the back of a van. But 2 days after the burial at sea, later, Mr. Chohan's body was found by a canoeist near Bournemouth Pier, and the bank letter sent to Reagan at his father's address was discovered. The bodies of the 2 women were also recovered from the water, but those of the 2 children were never found. Reagan and Hornsey were sentenced to die behind bars when they were both given whole life sentences at the Old Bailey. Rees was ordered to serve at least 23 years of a life sentence. The judge, Sir Stephen Mitchell, told them, "Your crimes were uniquely terrible." In the end, justice caught up with Kenneth Reagan and William Hornsey, but at a cost that can never be repaid. 5 innocent lives. Amarjit Chohan, his wife. Nancy, their 2 sons. Devinder and Ravinder, and Nancy's mother Charanjit Kaur, were taken in a crime born from greed, arrogance, and a complete lack of humanity. For weeks, the Chohan family's disappearance was treated as a mystery, even a possible business trip gone wrong. But beneath the surface lay a horrific truth. Reagan and Hornsey had executed a calculated plan to kill Forge and profit. They wanted Chohan's company Sibba Freight, and they believed murder was the easiest route to success. After the family was lured to Regan's farmhouse in Salisbury, they were drugged, strangled, and disposed of at sea, their bodies dumped into the English Channel like evidence to be erased. But evil leaves traces. In April 2003, Chohan's body washed ashore near Bournemouth. Weeks later, the bodies of Nancy and Charanjit Kaur followed. The children's bodies were never found, yet their absence spoke louder than words. In 2005, both Reagan and Hornsey were convicted of 5 counts of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment without parole. The judge called it one of the most wicked and callous conspiracies ever seen in British courts. Their motive was simple money, but their cruelty was beyond comprehension. For the Chohan family's surviving relatives, justice brought little comfort. The loss was too deep, too absolute. A family line, a legacy, and the laughter of 2 children all erased for profit. Today, the Chohan murders stand as a chilling reminder that behind wealth and ambition can lurk unimaginable darkness. It wasn't a crime of passion. It wasn't insanity. It was pure greed. Greed so powerful it turned men into monsters. Evil doesn't always hide in the shadows. Sometimes it wears a suit, signs a contract, and smiles across the table. If this story moved you, subscribe for more true crime documentaries that expose greed, betrayal, and the fight for justice for those who can no longer speak.